Learn to write with confidence and authority. With Your Best Stories audio blogs. Episode 2. This episode is on how to increase your authority as a writer. The first part deals with tightness of prose and the second with your tone of voice. Part 1. Cutting the poppycock. Write with power and authority. Sometimes your reader escapes. Even if your lead is superb and you've hooked your readers from the start, they might still get away before reaching your last paragraph. How does that happen? There are many possible reasons. In this part, we'll discuss one of them. Extraneous material. When we sit down to write, excited by all we want to say, we scoop spoonfuls of extraneous material into our books, articles and emails. But your job is to keep every next sentence relevant and catchy. Stray but a little and the reader moves on. Make sure there's no extraneous material. Asking questions. If you want to write with power and authority, you need to scrutinize every word, phrase or sentence and omit everything that does not do useful work. Ask yourself questions about your text. At the sentence level, does my reader need to know this? Is it important for my colleague to know why I'm not available? Or for the reader of my history essay to know when that pope was born? Is one example enough to make your point? Many readers have patience or time for only one illustration. You can often merge all examples into one. Make sure you only use more than one example when you really need it for clarity. Does my reader know this already? Most of the "as you know" kind of sentences are superfluous. Resist the urge to explain. You might find that your addressees need different messages. For books, you need to choose one audience, but for other communication channels, consider writing multiple versions. That way, everyone gets what's important to them. At the word level, did I use unnecessary passive structures? Passive structures can cause wordiness and confusion about who's doing what. To clarify that, you need another by phrase. For example, this blog was first written as a LinkedIn post by Niels Kwakenaak. Is every word relevant to your thesis statement? For example, do you need all these adjectives and adverbs for your reader to understand what you're saying? Can you cut asides? Are you using weasel words? You can usually cut words like just and somewhat and kind of without a change of meaning. Are you using complicated noun strings that have a shorter, more powerful counterpart? Are you using words that repeat something that is already stated? Take your magnifying glass and have everything bulge out at you. And don't spare a syllable unless it helps make your point. The result is a more confident voice. Let's take a look at a couple of examples. Did you write what your reader knows already? Quote, "As you know, in our meeting yesterday we discussed the process of blah 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 and we concluded that whoopsie-doo. Therefore, I'd like to ask you to write me an email with a few examples of... Pop, pop, pop." That whole first sentence was not necessary, because the reader knows already what has been discussed in the meeting yesterday. You could just say, "Further to our meeting yesterday, I'd like to ask you to write an email with a few examples of whatever." An example of something your reader does not need to know. Quote, Because I'm going to visit my grandmother this afternoon, who unfortunately broke her hip last week, already for the second time in 2 years. Can you believe that? And now needs some daily care from people around her. I will be out of the office today. Please contact Lisa instead. The whole part of why the writer will be out of the office is not relevant. Just say, I will be out of the office today. Please contact Lisa instead. An example of unnecessary passive structures. Quote, the assignment can be returned to me by tomorrow end of day. A more powerful, active construction, please return the assignment to me by tomorrow end of day. You hear that the active voice has less wordiness and more power. An example of irrelevant words. Quote, and thus we conclude that men and women who eat a lot of sugar, listen to hard rock music and have big hairy feet are more likely to contract such diseases. Eating a lot of sugar has to do with many diseases, but I don't know of any diseases having to do with listening to hard rock music or having big hairy feet. These two statements are irrelevant for the thesis. Are you using weasel words? An example. And thus, we basically conclude that probably men and women who just eat quite a lot of sugar may be, in a sense, rather likely to kind of contract such diseases. Okay, nobody would write that way, but you get an impression of how much this weakens the writing to use all these weasel words. It chips away at your authority. A much better version would be, and thus we conclude that men and women who eat a lot of sugar are likely to contract such diseases. An example of using noun strings. These noun strings I made up myself, but you will recognize this principle in certain emails or letters you receive. You'd better take your downpour anti-drench protection shield, or umbrella. There's a precipitation activity imminency risk, or it might rain this afternoon. As you see, noun strings are often used to sound more interesting than necessary, but powerful, shorter words that describe exactly what you mean are always better than noun strings. Are you using words that repeat the meaning? You'd better run fast and get your umbrella, but don't slam the door shut. Running is fast by definition. So you better run. That implies go fast. But don't slam the door. If you slam the door is always shut. So slamming the door shut is also redundant. So look at your text word for word and see what you can remove, which redundancies you have used. In short, cut the poppycock. And now, just for the fun of it, in between the two parts, let's do a little etymology. I chose poppycock to avoid using a more obvious word. But poppycock does a poor job as a euphemism. It comes from the Dutch pop, the juicy food, like porridge, and kak. I'll let you guess what kak means. Put those two together and you have a very graphic image. Part 2. Build your authority as a writer. Write with a consistent tone. Didn't you hate those in your own words questions in school? Somehow those were impossible to answer without a fair deal of grinding beforehand. And as I was antagonistic towards the idea of studying at home, these exam questions were a likely culprit for my low grades. Thank God I overcame this antagonism, because own words questions prepare us for the writing craft. In this blog, I'll show you why the skill of using your own words is crucial for authoritative writing. Understanding your topic. Suppose you have been interviewing experts for your nonfiction book and they touched upon a subtopic you were unfamiliar with. You followed their reasoning, but you couldn't internalize the material. Now, You sit behind your desk, surrounded by notes and scribbles. Your chest tightens up, your writing slows down. At a loss for living words, you begin copying the interviewee verbatim, jargon included. You're botching the in your own words exam. What you need is a thorough understanding of the topic. You need to own the argument, live it, breathe it. Whether or not you agree with it, the argument must become part of you before you can convey it sounding like your unforced self. And sounding unforced is crucial. A forced tone chips away at your authority. When your prose sounds free, readers will feel you know what you're talking about. Inconsistencies throughout your book. Usually, writers aim to master their book's subject before they put pen to paper. If there are any dips in the comprehension, that shows in a few sections at worst. But inexperienced writers often interlace their free and personal sounding chapters with stuffy encyclopedia entries. In one chapter they sound like a young high school teacher, in the next like an 80-year-old college professor. The formal register is all over the place. You're looking for a consistent tone from the beginning of your book to the end. So be sure you fully grasp what you share with your reader. Spending more time with your topic. If you notice you're copying your source's words and phrases, take a step back and review your topic. Read another book. Watch another video. Wrestle through another course. Do some more free writing on the subject. The more time you spend interacting with your topic, the deeper it will anchor into your brain. Try to explain it to your grandmother, and only when she's nodding and asking the right questions do you return to your keyboard to continue typing, fast and free. Before speed comes understanding. A while ago, we briefly discussed how outlines can help you loosen up when writing your nonfiction book. I often recommend that my students write fast when connecting the dots of their outlines. High speed provides the relaxation you need to sound like yourself. But understanding should always come before speed. While creating your outline, test your knowledge by summarizing all the points you intend to make. If you get stuck explaining one of these things, you might have some extra studying to do. A nonfiction editor helps you spot inconsistencies. Even if you did everything right, your tone might change over the pages, especially if your manuscript is bulky. You might have written chapter 5 2 years later than chapter 1. You have grown. You might be devouring other kinds of books now than when you started. All these things can threaten the consistency of your book. I can help you spot all the problems that we spoke about in this audio blog and help you fix them. Book a free discovery call and we'll look at your manuscript together. I also offer a free course called the Change the World Writing Course. You will find the link in the description of this channel. Have a great day.